Hello, welcome back to the Bad Creatives Podcast Show. I am Alexa Van. Today, I am really burnt out, or as my dad would like to say, no, you're not. Mind over matter. I sure wish that worked for me, but it doesn't. So here we are. The bad creatives. The bad creatives. Yeah. When I'm burnt out, it's a little different than, I guess, a regular burnout, whatever a regular burnout is. When I have an autistic burnout, it's a lot more intense in length, severity. It does mean something different than just being tired. It kind of means like your brain just doesn't work so good. That's a really concise way of putting it. Things that maybe seem really easy to other people are hard to wrap your head around. And any kind of weird sensitivities I maybe have or were perhaps dormant are in the forefront. Does that sentence work? It's gonna have to. I'm gonna roll with it. So, what does one do when they're feeling incredibly burned out? If you can pull back. Obviously, that would be plan A. You know, unfortunately for me, sometimes even the things I really like to do and I really enjoy doing contribute to my burnout. Rude. So do I just never do them again? Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to say, I can't do this thing that I love because it's just going to make me feel worse. But that's the confusing thing about burnout sometimes is it's like, well, I could pull back here and rest up a bit, but that's actually going to put a lot more on my load in 1 or 2 days from now. There isn't really a perfect way of going about it other than if you do have more support and you can rest up, that is the number one goal. If I always waited to never be any level of burnout whatsoever, I probably wouldn't do much. Because I'm not a bajillionaire yet. I'm well on my way. Since I'm really burned out, I decided to tell you a little story. Story time with me, so we can talk about a really incredibly important topic to American history, which is Britney Spears. Why do you want to talk about Britney Spears? You may be wondering. Well, why wouldn't I want to be talking about Britney Spears? First of all. Second of all, when I was younger, I was obsessed with Britney Spears. I mean, like weird obsessed. I always took things a little bit further than other people. And so it was like, oh, I'm obsessed with Britney Spears. I listen to only her music again and again on repeat. I have all the Britney Spears posters I can get my hands on, going to every concert that my parents will buy me tickets to, which I think was like 2. I had a Britney Spears tour bus that opened up with a Britney Spears Barbie. I just wanted to sing. I wanted to be her. I knew all the facts about her. She wrote a book and I read it. Who knows if she really wrote that or not? I don't know, Britney, if you're watching this, I'm super curious. Britney Spears was my everything. She was like a god to me. And I also loved to sing. So I figured, great, I know exactly what I'm going to do when I grow up. I'm going to be like her. I'm going to be a pop star, the most famous pop star ever. I'm not going to need to graduate from high school. So I don't really got to worry too much about any of this stuff. And I'll be discovered. And then I'll be like Britney Spears at the end. I honestly believe that anyone who didn't want to be rich and famous or lying, it just didn't see any other point of life. I don't know if that had more to do with my unusual obsession with Britney Spears or if it was because I didn't grow up in a home with a ton of love. And so I thought, well, Britney Spears seems happy. She's always smiling and stuff. So maybe I'll be happy if I could be like that, the most famous person in the world in the 2000s. There's just like a few magazines, and that's who you hear about. It wasn't like all these TikTok, Instagram celebrities. For the most part, it was just what you saw on TV, on the channels provided, which wasn't as many as there are now, and what you saw in magazines. That it was like really the age of the big, huge superstars. We obviously still have them, but back then it was a lot harder to find that. It was a lot harder to reach it. You just heard about the main Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, Destiny's Child. From my point of view, there wasn't a middle of the road. It was me and nobody or Britney Spears. There was no other way of achieving success that wasn't like private jet. On my way to stardom, I took singing lessons. I sang a lot and I took dance classes. I danced a lot. I wasn't very great at dancing, but I wasn't discovered because I didn't really sing anywhere very often. I didn't have a momager, I didn't have a dadager, and I mentioned before, I really took to drugs being my main priority at a pretty young age. The whole rich and famous thing kind of like got put on the back burner until I was 18 and I moved to LA. And the guy who I was dating, he left me because I was too crazy, believe it or not. He'd just gotten out of jail. We were in a really great place with the two of us, and my fake ID got stolen and he left me. I don't remember why. So I came here to LA to be a big star. I guess I should probably start going on auditions. Plus, I couldn't get alcohol anymore because the guy left and he was over 21 and I didn't have a fake ID anymore. I guess I'll just go back to my whole dreams thing. I went on an audition and I thought, I'm definitely not going to get this because this is a really big audition. It's through Universal and it's my first audition. So I don't want to get my hopes up, but it's probably going to be really good practice for me to go on these auditions. I went with very little expectations. I sang a Christina Aguilera song and the producer cut me off and said, that's enough. And I was laughing while I was doing the dancing part, and I was like, that was fucking stupid. I lit a cigarette in the car on my way out of the parking lot. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go get drunk with my friend because that's obviously not going anywhere. I actually got it. They loved my attitude. They thought I was super fun, and I just seemed like I didn't really care. Go figure. I got signed through Universal, and I was finally discovered, and I totally get why these pop stars have nervous breakdowns. I 100% get it. I get why they hit a point where they're having a hard time staying sober, going to rehab. So many of these huge pop stars that were famous when they were really young, they're all having these meltdowns and stuff. Britney had a hard time, and Lindsay Lohan, she really struggled forever. Amanda Bynes, oh my God, Amanda Bynes. I get it. I was only in this project working on this for 2 years. And I don't even know if it was fully 2 years, but I never had a day off. And if I did have a day off for whatever reason, they would only tell me 10 minutes before I'd have to leave my house to make it to the studio on time. And they'd be like, we're not going to be meeting today. No explanation. So I could never plan ahead. Every single day of my life, I knew I was going to be there. I didn't leave LA during that time. I didn't have friends during that time. I had maybe 2 friends and they were just pushed to the wayside because I was being very controlled. Just very like, why would you want to hang out with them? Don't you take your career seriously? They said I was bad at dancing. So I had to dance extra. So I danced every single day. And I'm naturally a thin person genetically and also because I just don't really resonate with food and the textures of most food. But now all of a sudden I'm thinking every time I hop on the scale, every Friday when they weigh me, I say the weight out loud. Their reaction would be, oh, if it had gone down. So I was like, oh, I can get a little bit of recognition if it goes down. These people that I worked for or worked with, they slid a contract to me across the table. They pressured me to sign it without showing my parents or a lawyer or anything like that. They're like, don't you trust us? These people knew what they were doing. They knew that I didn't have anybody around me. It was a perfect situation. They basically owned me and everything I did. And I didn't really care. That's the thing about having a big dream is it's really easy to be manipulated when you just have this big dream that you really care about. You're just a target for these kinds of people because you want it so bad they can really use that against you. This one producer that I worked with every day, he would give breadcrumbs or whatever where he pumped me up just enough to make me feel special. And then the rest of the time be so controlling and borderline humiliating to the point where it was like I really wanted the approval. So I kept trying harder and harder. And it would be like singing the song, dancing to the songs, and then stop, start over. He would never tell me what I did wrong. So I would just have to guess. It was very stressful. Would it really explain it? It was insane. I didn't have fun during this time. I obviously was not drinking during this time because there's just no way I would have been able to consistently show up for anything if I was drinking. It did give me a little reprieve from my alcoholic self, but all that was left was this. I was obsessed. I just honed in on it and I just thought, I'm going to make it. It's all going to be worth it because I'm going to get what I want at the end of this. I didn't get what I wanted at the end of it. There was no end of it. What actually ended up happening, I had a full nervous breakdown. The producer and I didn't see eye to eye on something. I was very stressed, very hungry and tired. He was criticizing my dad or something. And I just kind of snapped. I was like, don't talk about him like that. And he kicked me out. I was devastated. I went home and I just thought my life is over. everything I've worked so hard for. It was supposed to be all worth it. What was the point of all of this if I just get kicked out? It was just a total waste. I was miserable the whole time. Looking back, it was probably more like Stockholm syndrome. I don't know how many days later, but they did call me back. They wanted me to come back. They had invested a lot into me. They were just nonstop training me every single day, trying to turn me into this thing. I'm sure they wanted some return on their investment, and they wanted me back. And I tried to go back, but it was like the seal had been broken. I remembered what it was like to do drugs. I remembered what it was like to get tattoos and to go out partying in Hollywood. And it was just like, I couldn't get my head back in the game. I was just destroyed. I was ruined. I just eventually one day just stopped showing up. And I just said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. Went into a very intense depression. Didn't ever tell anybody what happened or what I had been doing in LA. Tried to move back to Seattle. That didn't work out. My dad was selling my childhood house. My mom was in rehab again. It was just like, oh God, not there. And then I went to Portland. I was like, nobody knows who I am here, and I'm just going to never talk about this again. It was crazy. I pushed it into the back of my brain and just never thought about it again for a couple years. I didn't tell anybody that I was into music, that I was a musician, that I had been in LA actively pursuing music. Felt horrible and decided to go to hair school one day because I wanted to make it seem like I was doing something. But in reality, I was processing the trauma of being alive so far. Fast forward, I'm not going to get into all of that happened in Portland. It really didn't have anything to do with this pop star journey. I just was having fun being a stripper, an alcoholic, and all of that kind of coming to a head in a super fun, let's marry a Coke dealer kind of way. If you want to hear more about that, you can check out my novel, Breakfast at Sassy's. So I moved back to LA 3 years after being in Portland. I had been hearing Lana Del Rey had this album out. It was amazing. She talked about LA and that voice. I was like, oh, you're supposed to be like a musician, be a pop star. It was always there and I just kept trying to drink it away. And it came back up. I was like, maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I should go back and try again. So I did. In a weird way, it's almost you could say my huge dream, this big obsession, saved me from this alcoholic despair. There was probably more to it than that, but it definitely was a piece of that puzzle, a piece of the pie, and helping me have something to live for. I bought a guitar and I taught myself how to play it from YouTube because of everything that had happened in Portland and in my life, and I was finally facing it and dealing with it and trying not to drink. I had all these things to write about. So that's when I started writing music, and I had the guitar. I learned the basic chords. I'm not an amazing guitar player. I don't care. I was so afraid to sing in front of anybody. I had always had stage fright for real, but after the whole pop star gone wrong situation, any kind of confidence I had was just gone. Because I had their voice in my head. This dude's voice in my head, like, you're too old to be doing this. If only we'd found you when you were younger. Even though I was 18, like, you're not a very good singer because you're so this or that. But you don't know how to listen hard enough. Truth be told, they definitely did make me a better singer. For sure. I learned a lot. But the negatives of everything that I had absorbed from that kind of environment canceled any of that out. It took me so many years to get over it, and they did basically own me or anything that I would have made money off of. But joke's on them. I didn't make any money off of anything for the next 5 years because I was just being a drunk. I started singing at open mics, like to completely empty rooms. I was so afraid to sing in front of anybody because of whatever reason. I'd start playing shows. I didn't invite anybody. I didn't tell anybody. I would go to an open mic night and sing a song at the very end. So nobody was there. It was kind of cute in hindsight, but very sad. I decided to put a song out. And years had passed at this point, and it's still out on YouTube somewhere under a different name. I had another little tiny show with a friend and nobody came because I didn't invite anybody. So obviously the venue didn't invite me back again. They don't care how talented you are. They're just trying to sell tickets. And I was like writing lyrics at a cafe, and this guy was like, what are you doing? Are you writing lyrics? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I play guitar. Do you want guitar lessons? And I was like, sure. We ended up starting a band and we were playing more shows and things were kind of moving along. I put out another single But this time I actually talked about it. I told more people about it. And all of a sudden people were like, oh, wow, can you play a show here? Can you play a show there? And I just kept saying no. I was like, I can't because I don't have a drummer. That was always my excuse. I put out another single, and somebody heard it and they were like, oh, can you play a show at this new venue? And I was like, I can't because I don't have a drummer. And he was like, oh, hang on a second. Yeah, Jeff will do it. He said he'll play the drums for you. And I was like, cool, great. My excuse had backfired horribly. I went to work that day and I was like, what am I going to do? So I got this other guy. I was like, will you play guitar? Can we play this show in 3 weeks? He was laughing at me. He's like, no, we don't even have a set list, let alone a band. And I was like, should we try? And he was like, okay, let's try. I have a guitar player and a drummer. And then I went to work the next day at a different spot, and this guy was like, hey, I just heard your single. I didn't know you played music. Let me know if you ever need anybody to play in your band. I was like, actually, I do need somebody to play in my band. So I had the full band. Just like that. And we started playing shows, and it was really fun, and it worked out really well. The whole time I was doing this, I was having a lot of fun, and this was rock music. I wasn't even doing pop music anymore. It was so hard for me to let go of what that was supposed to look like. Why do we do anything? Why do we make art? Because we like it, right? That's the difference between just doing something for money and then doing something you love. We hope that the thing we love could make us money. That's 2 birds with 1 stone, right? I was still so fucked up about the Britney Spears thing, even though I wasn't even making pop music or trying to be a pop star, or I didn't even really have that personality anymore. That was hard for me to ever feel like anything that I did was good enough. I just kept pushing the bar, and I was like ruining my own experience with it. Not consciously. I was pushing myself really hard. I was working too much and trying to do a lot. It just made everything I was doing feel really overwhelming when it could have just been just because. I was about to turn 30. I kept counting down. I have X amount of time to make it before I can never make it. I just tried to figure out who were the artists that I admired that had gotten really famous. At what point did that happen for them? And what was the oldest one I could think of? And I think the oldest person who I knew who had made it big, she was like 31. So I was like, okay, that's my cutoff is like 30. So in my 20s, I thought that I was going to turn 30 and just become so old I couldn't stand up straight anymore or something like that. You know, there's a lot more that I'm sure plays into that, just like with the society that we live in, putting such an emphasis on being a 15-year-old sex object. I thought that I was running out of time. And then all of a sudden one day, my time had run up. I was 30 and I was like, okay, am I going to stop doing this now because I'm old? I looked in the mirror and I was like, I look the same. My clothes still fit. I don't know exactly what I was expecting to see as some kind of marker of my time being up, or that people were going to start calling me out like, you can't sing that song. You're too old. I don't know what I was thinking was going to happen, but it didn't happen. I just continued on doing exactly what I had been doing. Only this time around, I was like, you know what? I don't really care what happens anymore. This whole time I had so much pressure on this having to go a certain way or lead to some kind of certain outcome that it was almost impossible for me to really enjoy it. I was like, fuck it. I failed, I guess. So now I'll just do whatever I want. And it was very freeing. And I've been having a way better time ever since then. What I realized looking back was if all you ever do anything for is for the outcome, you're basically saying your life doesn't matter and your experience doesn't matter and you don't matter unless you achieve X, which is just keeping you stuck on this insane hamster wheel. If achieving everything you ever wanted was really the only thing that mattered, then why do all these pop stars who did achieve so much success end up going so fucking insane? It's obviously not everything. And I know that not every person who's famous goes insane, but I'm just saying it's not everything. I think I realized I really didn't know what it meant to like what you were doing. Nobody had ever showed me. I didn't have any kind of idea of somebody in my life enjoying their life. My dad didn't like what he had done that had made him money. He's always saying, do what you love, because I think that is what he didn't do, even though he had achieved success. He wasn't doing what he really loved, and he missed that. And my mom was just obviously never happy and didn't know how to be happy. And the only way she told me how to be happy was like to marry a rich guy, which I still have not done. And I'm not trying to do either. I couldn't really look around me for a role model as to how to enjoy my life. I thought Britney Spears' big, perfect white teeth smile was the answer for that. Now, deep down inside me, I hadn't ever found anything other than that. But along the way, I was having a lot of fun. I really liked my life. When you live your life all for the cause, you can make these sacrifices because it's all for the cause. Okay, I don't want to ever really commit to anything because my favorite thing is my art and I want to make sure I always put that first and foremost. When I became 30 and I was like, I'm still a bartender and I'm also not a famous musician, well then shit. Did I ruin my life? Did I fuck my life up? I had to sit with that for a while because it was a tough one. And what I realized is like, absolutely not, especially knowing what I know now. I could have just have done things a different way and maybe have been comfortable. I gave everything up for my dreams and now it was all for nothing. And like, I didn't die, nothing bad happened. And I was like happy enough, enjoying my life, doing my thing. And that was what I realized is like, well, I guess I failed. So I'll just do my thing. And what am I going to change? So I did change a few things, but I didn't like, I have gotten to look back at my life. I always went for what I really wanted to do. I don't ever have to wonder what it would have been like. I mean, sure, there's the voice, oh, you could have tried harder, you could have sang more, you could have tried out for American Idol. Maybe I will, who knows? Life's not over yet. I look to these icons, Britney Spears, and I just think, man, don't really want what you have. I actually just want to do what I'm doing, but have more money. I do like my life. Good to know. I guess in a way that I've achieved everything that I could possibly dream of achieving. But the trick is you just have to like it. You have to realize that you like your life. Because if you don't like your life, then you could really ask yourself, what was the point of it all? I never really got what I thought that I wanted. I feel totally fine. And almost a part of me is like, why did I really want that? I don't even really know. When you trade everything for a dream and everything becomes about that, you think you're living your own life, but you're cutting yourself off. I think in some ways that's why it made it easier because it was tunnel vision. That's all I had to think about. That's all I care about. But in all these other ways, I didn't even live my life because I was trying so hard just to do this one thing. The dream isn't supposed to wreck you. I think people really want to make you think that whole capitalist ideal. You just work really hard forever and then one day it pays off. But no, I think you're supposed to have a good time. I think they're lying. I did have a good time and I can see that in hindsight. If I ever fucking hate what I'm doing, I'm not going to do it anymore. Not just because I'm having a bad day. But if I consistently do not like what I'm doing, I'm not going to do it anymore because it's my life. And I don't have a dream that's making me its bitch anymore. It's actually nice. When you give up the dream, you give up this identity. And there's this whole hollow emptiness that comes with that. And I really don't think people talk about enough. I don't really know what everybody else cares about, but I definitely know what I care about. And it's not this. This isn't real. None of this really matters. It doesn't. And getting people to like you doesn't really matter. And it's like a really horrible way to live your life. Sometimes I wish I could go back in time and tell a younger version of myself that, because I think I would have maybe been less afraid. Like I would have known that all those little mistakes didn't mean I was doing anything wrong, that it was just kind of like all part of it and that it was supposed to be fun. But whatever, I trust that it was all part of something and I'm cool with where I am now. I mean, if somebody came up to my door and offered me, because let me just say, I have been offered record deals before, but if you read them, a lot of times they're just really bad. I already made that mistake one time. I was not about to do it again. So fuck, if you have to trade everything just for one thing, I just don't think that's a good trade. I think we should just give art back to the artists. Just do it because we like it. Wasn't that the point? Or was it always to try to get other people to like it? I don't know. What I do know is life did feel a lot simpler when all I had to do was think about how I could be more like Britney Spears than how I could be more like me. Because Britney Spears was just an idea. I am a whole, full, very confusing, complex person who wants one thing, but also wants everything else in the whole world all at once. So, you know, I'm tired. The bad